Mr. Upsall, Mr. Talbot, Mrs. Ravenberg, and distinguished guests here, members of the National Farmers Union who live in South Dakota. I did try very hard to get here for your first date, and I had one experience on that trip that I had never had before, and I hope I never have it again. I got stuck in a wheelchair. I couldn't walk through the blizzard and the drifts in Minneapolis to the plane, so they started taking me out to the plane in a wheelchair, and the wheelchair got stuck in the drifts. Finally, two big husky porters came along and lifted the wheelchair out of the drifts, and then lifted me out of the wheelchair and took me out and put me on the plane. And as Paul says, I flew over Huron into Minneapolis. I flew over Huron back to Denver. It was one of the nastiest storms that I had experienced in that part of the country up there. I want to say that President Patton had himself very well hedged on the matter of being represented here at the South Dakota dedication. He was extremely sorry that he could not come. But in case that Mr. Talbot was not going to be able to be here to speak for him, he asked me then to speak for him. And I'm very happy that Mr. Talbot was here to speak for him, since I would have then had to make two speeches to you, his and my own. And I would prefer only making the one. Of course, it's impressive for anyone to see this fine new building here, and I have been impressed by the ceremonies. I'm always moved when one of the juniors talks, and Mavis did a very beautiful job this morning, and I noticed that there were many people in the audience who felt as I did, deeply moved by what she said. I am always interested in seeing the faces of those people with whom I have worked over a good many years, the directors of education from the local to the states, and those people with whom I worked very closely when I was here in this area. The people who, Mr. Syftestad, who served on the board of the Northwest Education Service. It's particularly interesting to me to be here where it seems to me that in this area that we took very real cognizance of the full name and the meaning of the full name of the Farmers Union, the Farmers Educational and Cooperative Union of America. We built here, you people, and those others whom you represent who are here, and those other members of the Farmers Union in these states have built the big multi-million-dollar cooperatives which you own and which you patronize. It was here too, in this state, where there was first developed a recognition of the need of a program of education, a definite program of education for young people. In 1929, your state convention recognized that there should be such a program. And so it seems to me that there has gone hand in hand with the development of the big cooperatives here and of the many, many, many local cooperatives out over this state and the surrounding states, a program of education which was not only for the young people, but which developed further as an educational program, a definite educational program for those who were not young people anymore. Minnie Lovinger and Elsie Olson are two people who had a great deal of influence upon my thinking. I owe to both of them a debt of gratitude that I can never repay, because they first opened my eyes to what could be done for young people within the Farmers Union. Although I had grown up in a family where the economic ideas of the time and liberal ideas of economics and political behavior was a part of the daily fare, still it is true that I owe to those two women a very great deal in the line that my thinking along the line in which my thinking developed in the Farmers Union. A great many people, as your program says, a great many people were thinking about the education of young people. A few people acted. And so far as I know, the South Dakota Convention in 1929 was the first state convention where a definite action was taken to set up a program of junior education. At the same time, during that same year, a number of people in North Dakota and in Iowa, in Kansas, and in Illinois were also thinking in terms of education for young people, because it isn't easy to learn all of the things that farmers need to know if they're going to farm. I think that anyone who listened to what the chairman of the National Executive Committee just said to you a few minutes ago recognizes that farming is a job that takes more than just being able to get on a tractor and get out and turn the soil. You have to know something about what is happening to farmers and why it's happening to them and why you must do something about it. And that's not easy when you start talking in terms of parity formulas, sliding scales, and yes, we know about sliding scales. We've done so much sliding, we understand that. But when we come to some other parts of this problem of legislation for farmers, it takes a long time study, and we need to begin it when we are young in order to know something about what may be done to meet the problems that are farmers' problems, and more than farmers' problems, the problems of the entire United States, yes, and of the world today. And so a few people acted, and in 1930 a national junior program was developed. Those who had thought about it in their states came together to think in terms of getting a unified program. And we did that in 1930.
your efforts to expand RE8.
This meeting is no doubt considered kind of sober and solemn, but nevertheless I think it should be one of rejoicing as well, because, as the young lady said, you are winning together, and I believe that's just exactly what you are doing. First, I want to pay my respects to the pioneers of the Farmers Union in South Dakota. The gentleman who addressed you here representing the pioneers is one of the pioneers himself, and then the young lady who represented the younger folks responded, kind of give me a thrill, because I know from my own experience that there wouldn't be any Farmers Union if it wasn't for the pioneers. And there won't be any Farmers Union in the future if it wasn't for the young folks. The pioneers have set a pattern, so to speak, for Farmers Union organization work and the carrying on of all of the principles of the Farmers Union as it was laid down 50 years ago and readopted at your Golden Jubilee Convention in Dallas, Texas in March of this year. Those of you who were present at that ceremony where they readopted the Constitution and the bylaws, I venture to say you all said it was a historic day for the Farmers Union. Because when people, 50 years from the time that the Farmers Union was organized, could get together and with merely a few minor amendments to bring it up to date, could readopt the principles of the Farmers Union, which was laid down by those early pioneers 50 years ago, it really was a historic occasion. And I had the privilege of being there, and one of the unforgettable incidents in my life. The pioneers should be proud that they have built the Farmers Union as strong as it is here in South Dakota. And to you young folks, I want to say, even though today it looks pretty good, you're here at the dedication of one of the finest buildings there is in the community. You have a great responsibility to carry on the principles and the policies laid down by the pioneers in the National Farmers Union 50 years ago and the pioneers of the South Dakota Farmers Union, which is now about 35 years old. I can recall, Mrs. Edwards, when you were very active in the youth movement here in the Northwest, and I recall very distinctly the efforts which you put forth in establishing the so-called Northwest Farmers Union Educational Committee, comprising several states here in the Northwest. And even though I only had a very, very small part in it because I was not in the educational field, it thrills me when I think of what happened. And I sincerely hope that the Farmers Union, as a national organization and as these state organizations, a part of the national, will continue to carry on a program of bringing the young folks into the Farmers Union and have them understand what it really means. Because if you don't do that, someday you'll find the Farmers Union will dwindle down so it's very, very small. And that should not happen.
What part?
In the farm.